Hello, and hi. Welcome back to JWV or Jules Wild Void, where this Uno wild card of a human being talks about ostensibly whatever. Now, there's actually a terrible idea that I am willing to put out into the universe. That idea in question is okay, you know how, they you know how Disney has a couple movies based on Disney villains? Like there's Maleficent and there's Cruella. What if they made a Disney movie centered around Gaston from Beauty and the Beast? Okay, now hear me out on this, right? If Disney does make a movie centered around Gaston, what if it's inspired by those 80s live action movies like Rambo or Predator, to where it's 100% like testosterone and muscles and stuff, and what if they make a montage of Gaston like working out and like flexing his muscles in front of a mirror and stuff. I could see that happening in a live action Gaston movie. If Disney bothers to make it, that is. And knowing Disney, they probably will do it for a paycheck or a cash grab. And to add a cherry on top, either Sylvester Stallone or a modern muscular actor starring in it. Stars in it. that's my pitch to that's my pitch to Disney. They'll probably never see the light of day. A live action Gaston movie. Then after that, they'll probably go down the line and make more Disney villain centered movies, live action, Ursula, Dr. Facilier, Jafar, Scar, Madame Mim, Queen of Hearts, etc. for a quick payout. I could totally see them doing that because it's Disney. It's freaking Disney. And Mickey Mouse wants his money! Haha! That being said, out with the Disney magic and in with the blood splattered horror. Because, fun fact about me, I am a huge horror fan. And I figured I tell you guys my introduction, my weird introduction to horror, as well as maybe give you guys my top 5 favorite horror films of all time, because why the heck not? So, here's my weird introduction to the realm of horror movies. Okay, so I have way more of a history with horror than I thought I did, primarily because of my parents, primarily my mom, but I didn't really get into horror until I was a teenager in high school. Especially due to Halloween Horror Nights. But as a kid, Halloween was one of my favorite holidays. And nowadays it is my favorite holiday. But as a kid, I always enjoyed Halloween, dressing up and going to going to houses to see if they have candy. And even as a kid, I dressed up as spooky characters. Or, I dressed up as creepy. Most of them non creepy, but some of them creepy. But, and technically, if you want to call this a horror movie, my first horror movie I watched was Coraline, and that was at a really young age. I just remember eating dinner and watching Coraline on the big screen and getting creeped out when the other mother turns into a spider demon thing. And to this day, it still gets me. Not really, but you know what I mean. Yeah, technically, my first horror movie was Coraline, but it wasn't a rated R horror film. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know what I mean. But to this day, it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. But ever since going to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights 28 in Orlando, Florida with my parents, that's when I that's when I started gravitating towards horror. But it wasn't until Halloween Horror Nights 29 a year later, or or was it Halloween Horror Nights 30? One of those two. Wait, no, Halloween Horror Nights 29 a year later that I really started getting into horror, finding, searching up spooky podcasts and uh, searching up different horror films on the various streaming platforms I own, primarily Netflix, and essentially just like dipping my toes in this genre. And actually, during junior year of high school, I carried a It backpack, a Pennywise backpack, which got a lot of compliments. Funny enough, or either that or a lot of like freaked out reactions because people don't like clowns, which is understandable. Um, yeah. And one interesting response I get is have I've seen It Chapter 2, which is the horror movie that made me the horror fan I am today and still one of my favorite horror films. In other words, It Chapter 2, I guess you can say, shape shifted me into who I am today. Insert joke drum here. I don't know. So yeah, It Chapter 2, in a sense, kickstarted my little horror phase that I'm currently still in. And that was a movie I've been wanting to see in theaters. Did I see it in theaters? No, unfortunately not. But I did watch it at home, and it was a really cool experience. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. And ever since watching It Chapter 2, I discovered more horror movies. I discovered the first. I discovered It Chapter 1. I discovered the movie Us. I discovered House of a Thousand Corpses, etc. And I just watched. The remainder of my day was watching horror movies. It was a bloodbath for sure. Not really. Just pretend it was. Even in senior year of high school, like when I was a senior in high school, I I remember watching a bunch of horror films like consecutively, and like whenever my teacher would like ask what movies have you seen, I would name off a bunch of horror movies I've seen. I remember I was watching like what, Silence of the Lambs and Evil Dead and Trick or Treat, Friday the 13th, just random horror films. And because I was dipping my toes into like this genre that again I have more of a history with because of my parents. primarily primarily my mom. I thank her for getting me into this genre. Well, actually, not really. Just, well, yeah, she got me into the genre. Thanks, mom. With that introduction, if you want to call it that, out of the way, I want to give you guys, or tell you guys, my top 5 favorite horror movies of all time. As of right now, my opinion will probably change. At number 5, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. I feel like out of all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Dream Warriors has to be my favorite. Primarily because it nails the balance between spooky Freddy and comedic Freddy, and all the actors, well, most of the actors, did a really good job, and the kills were gnarly. At number 4, we have Pet Sematary. The original Pet Sematary from 1989. This movie, it was the closest horror movie to actually make me cry. Like, it made me feel things. It was very, it was gut wrenching to say the least. And it's it could be a very hard movie to sit through, but it's actually a really, really crazy, crazy ride once you get into it. Especially with Gage and Church, the cat, and Lois as he's trying to, as he just wants his baby. At number three, Thrace, from one Stephen King movie to another, Christine. This is a movie my mom actually told me about. And as soon as I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this movie. Because I didn't know what to expect. I thought it was going to be about some girl named Christine and she kills people. No. It's a car that kills people. And as someone who is not the most knowledgeable on cars, I actually really do enjoy this car, the Plymouth Fury, killing people, primarily bullies. It has a great score. I feel like out of all of John Carpenter's scores, I feel like Christine's is probably my favorite score, tied with Halloween's. So good. Such a good score. And it fits the tone of the movie. At number two, Scream. What's your favorite scary movie? Now stop. But Scream, the original Scream, the first Scream, I love this movie. It's definitely one of my favorite slasher films, and I don't think this movie needs any introduction. It's a really good slasher film, and I love all the meta-ness, like the meta aspect it has going on with referencing other movies such as Halloween and Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, etc. And the mystery aspect of it is spot on. Like, you don't know who is the Ghostface killer until you find out who the Ghostface killer is. And at number one, hello, Georgie. It. The 2017 version, that is. It 2017 is my favorite horror movie of all time. I really love this movie. Everything from the acting to the story. Like for what it did, what its purpose is, trying to not only do justice to the 1990 original, but also make it their own, is really, really cool and spot on. They did really good with it. Instead of it taking place in the 1950s, it takes place in the 1980s. And they did a really good job of it. The actors and actresses, like I said, did a really good job. Pennywise was a phenomenal villain, and Pennywise is actually my favorite horror villain of all time for that reason. Bill Skarsgård did amazingly as Pennywise. And yeah, this will probably be my favorite movie, remain my favorite movie of all time, unless there's a movie that can triumph over this movie. Correction, my favorite movie of all time is actually Ghostbusters from 1986. I meant to say my favorite horror movie of all time, unless there's another horror movie that can replace it. But yeah, It 2017, number one, staying up there for a long time. Now, before I let you guys exit the void, it only makes sense I tell you guys my top 5 favorite horror villains as well, right? Right? Got it? Okay, let's do it. At number 5, again, Jason Voorhees. It was actually a toss-up between him and Michael Myers. And as much as I love Michael, I like Jason just a little bit more. Again, my opinions will probably change, and tomorrow my number five will probably be Michael Myers. But Jason, I think, has a cooler backstory. Even if I think Michael has better movies, I prefer the Halloween franchise over the Friday the 13th franchise. I think Jason's just more is like more ruthless than Michael. Number four is Chucky. I love this little doll. I know some people might not like Chucky. I adore this little doll to no end. And fun fact, I think he was actually the horror villain to, I guess, creep me out as a kid after seeing a bunch of thumbnails of the Child's Play movies. And Chucky's like creepy face being on the thing. I was like, that's gonna haunt me. So yeah, the same villain that haunted me is my fourth favorite villain. Number three, Freddy Krueger. Freddy, such a great villain. He's basically Chucky with, like, he's very arrogant, he's very cocky, he's killing people, but he's like very arrogant, except he has like better one-liners. Examples include, "This is God," and "You've got the body, I've got the brain." Yeah, lines like that. Number two, "Do you want to play a game?" And number two is Jigsaw. I really like the Saw franchise, and Jigsaw / John Kramer, such a phenomenal villain. Mainly because of the fact that he's like human, and like, John Kramer, he's a cancer patient, but his spirit lives through, assumingly, that puppet, Billy the Puppet. And fun fact, Jigsaw was actually the first like mask I ever purchased with my own money, I think. Yeah. So yeah, Jigsaw number two, and his traps for the most part are very, very gnarly, especially that needle pit from Saw 2. That's my favorite trap in the whole franchise, and it's so just scary. If you're watching this and you're not a horror fan, but you want to check out Saw, approach with caution. And at number one, I mentioned this before, I'll say it again, Pennywise. I don't know why a clown that shapeshifts into your worst nightmare appeals to me. It just does. Whether it's Tim Curry or Bill Skarsgård, both put on amazing performances as Pennywise, and I don't know what it is. The laugh, the balloons, the voices they provide. Pennywise is he's so scary. Like, he can, like, clowns are already scary enough, but the fact that it can transform into your worst fear, anything you fear, whether it's a werewolf or an abusive father, or whether it's even a mummy, just anything you fear he can transform into. It just appeals to me. That's all I wanted to talk about for this episode of JWV. If you want more, feel free to let me know, and because I'm uploading this on YouTube, possibly hit subscribe and the bell if you want more of this. Again, this was a little experiment that some people are really starting to like. But if you want more, feel free to let me know, and I will make more if I'm not busy. But until then, you may now exit the void. Jules out. This wild card heads back to the deck.